Welcome to the Clear Admit MBA Admissions Podcast. I'm Graham Richmond, and this is your WireTaps for Monday, June 6th, 2022. I'm joined by Alex Brown from Cornwall, England. Alex, how are things going?
Very good. Thank you, Graham.
So we've got a lot of stuff going on this week. This is that great time of year where, we've begun to really start thinking about the coming admissions cycle. We're talking about some interesting candidates this week. But are there any dates or deadlines or things that we want to be aware of that you want candidates to know about this week?
Well, we celebrated the Jubilee here in England over the weekend, so that's a date to put in, to have had in your calendar. But yeah, that's only.
Can you? I'm going to really embarrass myself, but is that like the Queen's sort of birthday, or what? What is the Jubilee?
No, we're celebrating 70 years on the throne.
Oh wow, 70 years. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So that is very impressive.
All right, I bet her son would have liked to have had the job.
Yeah,
by now.
It's very impressive. It really is. And, obviously there's some, do you believe in the monarchy or don't you or whatever, but she has been a terrific servant to that role, I believe. So hats off to our queen. But yeah, in MBA admissions, which is why people are listening to this podcast, there's really not a lot going on. The only sort of big deadline that's sort of still out there will be HBS's, early, 2+2 program, deadline, but that's not this upcoming week. It seems to be a little far off still at this point.
Okay.
But yeah, we still saw some waitlist movement last week.
Yeah,
and I'm still convinced that's going to continue.
Yeah.
So. Those of you folks still on wait list, still waiting, the key right now is to make sure that the schools know that you're very flexible.
Yeah.
And to know that you will come if you are admitted.
Exactly. Yeah.
Any equivocation there, you might as well not be on the wait list.
Yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that we're starting to see essay topics come out for the coming season. Often schools will publish their deadlines and their essay topics before they open up their official online application. And so we already have, Columbia, Dartmouth, Darden, Cambridge, I believe INSEAD as well. These are all available and the essays have been published for next year. We keep analyzing the essay questions and putting up our analysis on the website. So get started. If you're applying to any of those schools, you can start thinking about their essay questions at least and know what the deadlines are and so on. So we try to monitor that stuff and publish them as they're released. So stay tuned on the website for that.
And frankly, Graham, even if the school hasn't published their new essays, I'd encourage folks, if you've got your list of target schools, look at these essay topic analyses from prior seasons, because for many of the schools, the essays will remain the same or will be a close sort of, close to what they had last year. So starting to think about that stuff, even at this stage, it's not too early.
And I can tell you, I think I mentioned it a couple weeks ago, but both Wharton and Stanford have indicated that their essays, Wharton, it sounds like, are going to be the same. Stanford, we know that the first essay is going to be what matters most to you and why, as it has been for more than maybe 2 decades at this point. So even though those haven't officially been published, people can get off to the races there. Over on the website, Alex, we've been publishing a bunch of content. We ran this piece about the M7 business schools, which, just like what does it cost to go to an M7 school? What are the M7 schools? And just some nuts and bolts stuff there. But that got me thinking that I don't know that our listeners even know, what are the M7? What are the S7, as they're often called? And then what's the inside the MBA group, which is a group of schools that travel around that some would argue is like numbers 16 to 25. So there are these little groupings, and I just think it's fascinating. We should probably do articles about all of them. but we ran that, the M7 piece last week. So kind of interesting.
Very good. Maybe we need to come up with a primer for all these acronyms.
Yes, some kind of a glossary on the site or something. Yeah, that would be smart. We also continue to run out those real humans pieces. We did 3 in the last week alone, and I'm not going to get into a lot of detail, but we had this guy named Marcos who is a Michigan Ross grad who is now working at Amazon as a Pathways operations manager. And, so be it. He actually happens to, he's from Brazil. He's an engineer originally, and he's got an operations and consulting background. So it makes sense that he could be of assistance to Amazon. He had a really funny piece of advice, which was, quote, grades don't matter. He's like, if you always want to get the maximum grades, go for it. But if you're not looking for that, take a step back, take a deep breath, and do your best to learn things that matter to you and focus on having a clear plan for recruiting. You'll be fine. So that was his big takeaway, or kind of, big piece of advice to future candidates. And it sounds like he landed on his feet at Amazon. So I guess you can't can't fault him. We had
Does Ross have grade non-disclosure?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. Yeah, a lot of these MBA programs have what we call grade non-disclosure, where you get grades, but you're not allowed to share them with recruiters, and other programs just have like pass fail. So there is an emphasis on not creating a sort of cutthroat environment in many of these programs, and they do it in these different ways. So I don't know about Ross. I'll have to look into that for next week.
Yeah. So I'll take that advice and sort of expand on it a little bit. You could say grades don't matter. You could say extracurriculars don't matter, or you could say career services don't matter. But the point is, they all matter. But you want to come up with your blend of what's optimal for you and your MBA experience. And for some folks, excelling in the classroom really will matter. Because that's their forte, and that's how they're going to stand out, and that's how they're going to really sort of make the most of that 2-year experience. But for others, it's going to be do well in the classroom, but really excel in the extracurriculars to sort of get out of your comfort zone or explore a new industry or whatever it might be. And for others, it might be, I really need to excel and work hard with the career resource aspect of this whole experience. So again, do well in the classroom, get engaged in the extracurriculars, but focus that real energy on whatever sort of recruiting niche that you're pursuing. So I completely accept this notion of grades don't matter, but it's an individual choice.
Yeah, fair enough. And this next one you're going to love. We did a Real Humans about a guy named Joel who went to Stern, graduated in 21, and now works at McKinsey. But it gets interesting from here. He is from South Dakota, and before going to business school, he ran a craft brewery. So I thought that would be interesting to you. And he had some cool advice too, which was that he basically said that, he felt there was a lot of pressure up front about getting a great summer internship, and this feeling of like, if you don't get your dream summer internship, you've failed in some way. And he said that a better way to look at it is more like, he said, it's a consequence-free opportunity to give a job a test drive. And he said, I personally tried venture capital and learned that I wanted to be a bit more hands-on. So I pivoted to consulting, and he's landed with McKinsey. So anyway, that was just interesting advice. And maybe we can get him to send you a beer from the brewery, Alex.
I'm gonna take you up on that one too, because fantastic craft brewery. Gotta love that. I've actually, a friend of mine's got a barrel of beer in his garage right now, and we just tap the barrel, so the beer doesn't even have to go through pipes. It's much better. But in terms of his advice, I mean, if you're talking about, okay, I tried venture capital, realized it wasn't for me, so dipped into consulting. That to me is very much a top of the range sort of set of options, right? Most folks will not get a venture capital option. And for a lot of folks, actually the internship becomes a really important stepping stone for the recruiting process of what they're seeking. So while I love their experience, and it is a great way to trial a different career, that really works if in one instance you already know where you're going full time afterwards. Maybe you're being sponsored and you can go and have the freedom of trying something different. Or secondly, if you're a candidate like this, where you have opportunities to do one terrific thing, which means ultimately someone else is going to pick you up anyway, because clearly they're probably pretty outstanding.
Yeah, no, fair point. And I think you're right. If you're a career changer and you're really dying to break into consulting, I wouldn't recommend doing kind of a random summer thing if that's,
right.
So in any event. And then the last one we had is a woman named Avery, who's at Morgan Stanley, and she went to Cornell Johnson, graduated in 2020, and she's a technology investment banking associate, so doing banking with a focus on tech. And she, had also, everyone always gives such great advice, but she just talked about how she wished she had taken more advantage of kind of sort of taking control of her learning process. So she talks about how Johnson has this like great amount of flexibility. She talked about how professors are really willing to kind of craft stuff that allows you to pursue your interests outside of the traditional kind of course offerings. And she mentioned that she did an entrepreneurial project during the last semester of her second year, and that she wished she had kind of taken advantage of something like that even earlier because she didn't know, I guess, what was maybe available. So I think that's interesting as well, just this idea that you can do independent studies and craft special coursework at most of these programs if you want to pursue a certain niche or whatever it might be. So I love reading about these real, kind of real humans because it's just fun to see where people land.
Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic. And again, I'll add a little bit to this. This sort of goes into this idea of when you start your MBA program, you really want to go in with a very solid plan and really know what you want to get out of the experience. And to the extent that you really understand what's being offered, as in this case, realizing towards the end of this outstanding opportunity, yeah, maybe it would have been better for her if she'd have known about it earlier in the process. So absolutely fantastic. The three really interesting alums, I reckon.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple more housekeeping items, and then we got to get into our candidates for this week. But first up, our reviews effort continues. We're still trying to gather reviews from those of you who listen to the podcast or just use ClearAdmit's website. Just go to bit.ly/ClearAdmitReviews, all one word, all lowercase. And you can literally give us a rating and a review. What do you think of our community? And we just love to get that feedback. So please keep that coming. We also have some events coming up. On June the 8th, we're going to do an event about management consulting, where we've got a couple of former BCG folks who are going to talk with those in attendance about what it means to be a strategy consultant, how you get into it, all that kind of stuff, the recruiting process, et cetera. So tune into that. It's going to be at noon Eastern on June 8th, which is Wednesday of this week. So get signed up for that. And then the other big news is that our essay workshops, the signups have opened up for those. They're going to happen in July. They are free. Go to bit.ly/CA MBA essays to sign up. That's again, all one word, all lowercase. And I cannot believe, Alex, we're doing 4 of those events 4 weeks in a row. And it's literally, we've got Berkeley, Chicago, Tuck, and Darden the first week. Then we've got Tepper, Duke, UT Austin, LBS, and INSEAD in the second week. Third week, we've got Columbia, MIT, NYU, Stanford, and Wharton. And then the final week, we've got Cornell, Ross, UCLA, UNC, and Yale. So, I mean, I could not be happier with the list of schools that we've attracted to do these essay workshops. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Full disclosure, who haven't we got?
Yeah, for some reason, Harvard have not come on board, but I'm working on Chad. We'll see if we can get them to come to one of these at some point.
No, that's super impressive. But yeah, you read out a list of who's who, so who's not there. So it's only HBS. Huh?
I think they're the only one. Yeah, but it's fine. We can, they'll come around. In any event, the last thing is we got a review that someone left us over on Apple Podcasts. The review was a 5-star review, and they just titled it, "Well Worth Your Time." And they say, "Graham and Alex have fantastic attitudes and make the podcast an easy listen. They provide realistic and practical advice for candidates. As a military member, I also appreciate the diversity of their WireTaps choices. Wherever you are in your MBA journey, this is the podcast for you." So sign that guy up to help us with promotion. That was a really nice kind of quick summary of what we do here. So that was fun.
That was really nice. Thank you.
Yeah, much appreciated. So Alex, if anyone has questions for you or me, they can write a note to info@clearadmit.com. Use the subject line WireTaps. We love hearing from you. So please don't hesitate to send us a note. We will write back. Other than that, Alex, you've picked out some candidates. I guess we should get into those profile reviews, right?
Let's kick on.
All right, so this is WireTaps candidate number 1. So this is an MBA ApplyWire entry that we received, and the candidate has just 3 schools on their target list, and those schools are Dartmouth, Duke, and Yale. And they want to start school in the fall of 23. They've been working as a strategy analyst at a manufacturing firm. They're located in Central Asia, and they would love to land in the US, preferably in the Northeast. And they're thinking about consulting as a post-MBA career goal, and they list Bain, BCG, McKinsey, Accenture as landing places. They mentioned they went to a top university in their country, and they did a bachelor's in econ and finance. They led multiple student organizations. They did an exchange program that took them to the UK for a semester or so. They also are working for a really large manufacturing company in their home country, and they talk about, leading some fairly big projects and having some nice accomplishments there. They lead, I guess, some corporate social responsibility projects as well for their company. And again, they're going to apply this fall, love to get into consulting, but they're also looking for some scholarship dollars. So Yale, they say, is a dream school. They're currently prepping for the GMAT because they have no GMAT score. And I think I didn't mention this, but they have a 3.9 GPA and just a couple years of work experience at this point. It'll be 3 when they matriculate. But Alex, what do you think are the key considerations for this candidate in Central Asia?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this before we came on air. We're assuming because they're from Central Asia, they're going to be actually underrepresented in the pool.
Yes.
We don't know specifically where they are from Central Asia, so that might add a little bit more insight. But I like, on the whole, I think that's going to be a positive, because one of their concerns is they don't have international experience, i.e. experience out of their country, work experience. I think they had some academic experience in the UK. But so they threw that out as a concern. But my sort of pushback on that is actually your experience in your country is probably going to add diversity to the classroom and to the learning. So it should actually be a net positive in that regard. I do like the fact that they work in a sort of large manufacturing company. They make stuff. They worked on big projects, launching big projects, and it just sounds like the work experience itself, wherever it was done, is super interesting too. They've only had 2 years. I recognise that's on the lighter end. They'll have 3 at the point of matriculation. So I'm sort of hoping that that they continue and progress and so forth over this next year. I love their extracurriculars. I mean, I'm an animal person. They do some volunteer work at an animal shelter, and they also do, they helped open a new large state park, planting trees and so on and so forth. So it seems like they have a really good sort of set of interests outside of work that show a good degree of compassion and the environment and so forth. So that should resonate really well with the AdCom. We don't know their GMAT score. We do know their GPA. So they've got a 3.9 GPA. We don't know the caliber of university, I don't think. But wherever they went, it looks like they've done very well. If they could also return a very good GMAT score, and I think they said they're sort of targeting in that 730, 740 range, so they must be wicked smart, because obviously that's a high GMAT score. I think if they come back with a high GMAT score, Graham, everything together, maybe showing a little bit more potential than necessarily what they've done, but everything together, they should be targeting the very best programs, or at least take a flyer at Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, because their concern is that HSW, Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, is unreachable. I don't agree with that, and especially if they come back with that strong GMAT score. And even if they're looking for scholarship dollars, we know the average amount of money coming out of Harvard this year was $80,000 or something. So it's still attainable or achievable at the very best programs. They seem to have a passion to want to be at Yale, and I'm not dismissing that that's a really good sort of school to target as a reach school. So I certainly wouldn't dissuade them from that. But why not also be targeting M7 and so forth?
Yeah.
A lot to like here, Graham.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think being from Central Asia, it puts them in a really small minority in the pool. There just aren't that many people. And again, we don't know if it's Turkmenistan or Uzbekistan or which of the kind of Central Asian countries it is, but it's not an overrepresented part of the pool. When I saw this profile, the first thing I thought as well was, wait a second, if they score north of 700 on the GMAT or 730 or whatever around the averages at these top schools, there's no way that Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton are out of limits for them. I mean, they should absolutely be thinking about those schools. Now, the list that they have, Tuck, Yale, and Duke, 3 fantastic programs, 3 relatively small programs. And so maybe there's something going on there too, where they want a kind of close-knit experience, but I still would encourage them to consider a couple of schools that rank above those just in case. And, you never know what's going to happen. It could be as simple as, wow, they get into Wharton or Harvard and they get a lot, as you say, of financial aid, and maybe they get less at the other options. So they need to, I say, cast a slightly wider net, take a flyer on a very top school as well. And I think they could really do well as long as they obviously put the time in on the essays and application materials. But I really like this candidate. I think the last thing I was going to say is, if they don't stay in the U.S., if they ever foresee themselves working back in Central Asia or wherever it might be, thinking about the global brand of the institution that they attend is going to be pretty important too. So I would encourage them to investigate, to what extent is there any name recognition in their local market or wherever they might end up if they don't stay in the States. So, but yeah, great candidacy.
That's quite likely why Yale's at top of their list.
I agree. Yeah, I suspect Yale has a great brand and is kind of a household name in the way that a Harvard would be, or so that makes a lot of sense to me. So anything else on this one? I want to thank them for submitting their profile. Very good stuff here.
I want to thank them for submitting their profile and thank them for helping out the dogs in their part of the world. Yeah,
that was really nice to see. So let's move on and talk about WireTaps candidate number 2. So this is another fall of 23 ApplyWire entry, and this person's got 4 schools on the target list, and those schools are Harvard, MIT, Stanford, and Wharton. This person has been doing what they called Fortune 500 skunkworks / internal venture strategy consulting. And post-MBA, they want to work in maybe aerospace or potentially auto or manufacturing, and they've got SpaceX, Blue Origin, Planet. They've got a whole bunch of firms on the list here. They have a GMAT score of 750 and a GPA of 3.6. They've been working for 3 years, and they're located in DC. They noted that, it's funny, I guess, I'm trying to think what this number means. It says 24M. I guess that means they're a 24-year-old male, or is it 24 months at matriculation? That's what I'm trying to figure out. I guess they have 3 years of experience, then that's more than 24 months. So it must be that they're a male Asian American. They studied philosophy with a minor in physics and politics at a top 30 private undergrad. They graduated a full year early. So that's why they're a bit younger, I'm guessing, if they're just going to be 24 when they start business school. They don't have any, they claim they don't have any extracurriculars after finishing up at undergrad, but they were quite active as an undergrad, and we later learned after we probed with them that they maybe have some hobbies and things they do in their current spare time. But the big thing about this candidate is that they not only want to get into the kind of space, but they also have longer term goals in kind of politics. So I'll read out exactly what they said. They said short-term goal is pursuing an MBA so that they can pivot into the space sector in kind of corporate strategy and development, and that in the long term, they would love to hold political office. They claim that they're going to talk about a very unique family background and kind of personal motivations in that domain. So in any event, this is kind of the basics of it. But Alex, you and I both of us went back and forth with this candidate on the post over on the website. So I'll let you kind of set the stage a little bit in terms of what we thought of their candidacy.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at their just regular stats, 750, 3.6 GPA, and they studied philosophy and physics. I'm not sure how you study both of those subjects. It just seems at one end of the spectrum to the other end right there. But nevertheless, I think there's a lot to look and like about this candidate in terms of potential superstar type sort of caliber. It looks like the work experience that they've done is super interesting, and so forth. I mean, they're looking at sort of venture strategy. They've done venture strategy. It all seemed a little bit complicated to me, quite honestly, Graham, as I was reading through it all. But it sounded like that they've done very well and they've had really good experiences and can probably show really good growth and all the other things that are very important for AdCom to realise. At matriculation, I think this is how you interpret this, they're going to be 24 at matriculation. and they're male Asian American in terms of their demographics. So from that standpoint, they might be a little bit overrepresented. They're certainly going to be younger, and this
Yeah.
does smack us of a younger candidate who's done super well in what they're doing. They're no longer involved in sort of formal extracurricular activities. They were super involved in their undergrad, which is there's lots of outstanding candidates that sort of fit that profile and are able to target the very best programs. So a lot to like there, and I've got to believe them in terms of their goals make sense. And they came up with a really interesting analogy in terms of describing the fact that they wanted to be the driver of the train on the railroad tracks, and the railroad tracks is more about the politics end of it, and so on and so forth. Anyway, it was interesting to read. I'm not describing it particularly well. But the bit of a concern is, are they a little bit unidimensional? Are they a little bit sort of younger? From a maturity standpoint, is now absolutely the right time. I think they can convince us that now's the right time. I want to see a little bit more of that personality coming out, so that they show that they're not just a one-trick pony and they do some other interesting things, despite, other than being super successful at work, which I believe they have been. And Graham, they said they do some oil painting and play the trumpet, and not just dabble, but they've done this over a several year period. How do they weave that into their candidacy in order to show that there is a balance here?
Do they do the two at the same time, or no? These are separate activities, I presume.
I'm not sure that I know that, but yeah.
No, but I think it is interesting because they originally said, I don't do anything outside of work, right, in terms of formal activities. But then when we probed, they said, well, actually, for more than a decade, I've been doing oil painting, and I also been playing the trumpet. So I feel like if hopefully they're getting together maybe with friends and playing music, or they're kind of regularly going somewhere to paint, or like to the extent that they can formalize that activity, even if it's in the coming months, like maybe they join a little jazz combo or a classical music, group or something, or whatever they're interested in. Right. But I think those are fine. Like, every activity doesn't have to be sort of saving the world type stuff. Like it's okay if they, and I think mapping these interests to potential involvement on campus is also important. So, most of the business schools have kind of a drama or comedy club that often needs an orchestra to perform as well. And so there were plenty of people in business school when I was there who were doing, playing one instrument or another for the Wharton Follies, for example, which is the kind of Wharton comedy show. So there are ways to take these skills and bring them into the MBA community. And I would just encourage this person to think about that. I did really push back when I wrote on the site about this candidacy in terms of probing them and stuff and asking about their background, because I was worried. Here's someone who raced through college in 3 years, wants to be a politician in the long term, and was part of their undergraduate law review. And I'm sort of like, what all this law stuff and politics if they want to work? Why are they getting an MBA? And so I was really worried that they might be sending the wrong signal. I think they did an okay job of addressing that, in their response on the website, but it is something that they need to have in the back of their mind. So I would encourage them to really think about the career path, and the politics is more of a kind of long range goal that's sort of, maybe 20 years out or something. I mean, they don't have to, I don't want to put a number on it, but it shouldn't be the immediate stuff, because otherwise they're going to risk coming across as, like you said, sort of too young, goals too fuzzy, not really aligned with the MBA. So, but I think this candidate has a lot of potential, and they could do well in an MBA program. They did have this problem where they took a lot of AP credits in high school. And so by the time they got to university, they didn't have to take a lot of quantitative coursework, and so they took a few physics classes, but they just got B's in those. And so there isn't a lot of evidence on their transcript for quantitative ability.
Graham, have you ever taken a physics class?
Yeah, I have actually. But
do you know what it means to get a B in a physics class? I mean, it's not trivial.
That's true. So maybe it's fine. I think, obviously the other thing I was thinking about right away is, well, they have a 750 on the GMAT, and so presumably the quantitative score is, okay, right? So in any event, I think this person could be okay. I just want them to go in with their eyes wide open that talking about being, having a role in politics and, undergraduate law review, and there's this danger. And so I think the way they described it to you was much better when we probed them on it. This idea that no, I just don't want to be, I want to be driving the train, making the business decisions, not legislating around whether we can build the railroad tracks here or there, so, but yeah, any other thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I did love that. And another analogy I always like to use is in your life, are you the driver or the passenger? Mm-hmm. It's sort of a similar idea, right? The majority of us, we're passengers, but the drivers, that's what we're seeking out. Those that are sort of leading the way and driving the bus or the train or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. I do think, and not to belabor this point, that this candidate looks really, really strong. I don't think we should dismiss that. Their work experience does look super interesting. They got a 750 on the GMAT 360. I think that they absolutely show academic chops. But there's a consistent theme throughout their life. They're in a hurry and they're quite young, right? Yeah. So they did AP classes to get out of their quant classes at university. They graduated in 3 years. Now they're applying to business school after only 2 or 3 years of experience. So, and the reason why this is important to highlight is they're really going to need to show in their candidacy when they're applying that sort of maturity and real sort of recognition of what they've done, how it's helped them grow and learn, and how it makes perfect sense for their goals. And oftentimes that's how we can sort of distill out their maturity, is that connection with their goals and their focus and so forth. And I think there is evidence here in the ApplyWire entry where they've really developed that. Yeah. But certainly that's going to be really important.
Agreed. Yeah, they need to demonstrate that they know when to sort of stop and smell the roses and not, just kind of forge ahead. Yeah, now I'm thinking about this whole passenger in the car analogy, and I'm thinking the question I have is it a stick shift or, is it automatic? But that's a whole other story. All right, so let's move on, though. We have one more candidate. This is going to be WireTaps candidate number 3. And this is an ApplyWire entry again, and it's again someone looking to go to school in the fall of 23. This candidate has been working in supply chain, so an operations type role. They would love to get into tech or maybe consumer goods or even media, and they list Sony, Google, Apple as potential landing spots. They have a GPA of 3.56. They've been working for 8 years. And they haven't yet taken the test, but they're preparing to do so. And they have some questions around the test, which we'll get into. This candidate is located in LA and would love to be in either LA or New York after business school. The notes here indicate that she is a first-generation candidate who is currently, doing that work in supply chain, has some experience at a Fortune 50 consumer products company, and also has worked a little bit in med tech, so, medical technology. I think the idea right now is that this candidate, not a traditional candidate, right, 8 years of experience, but she points out that she sort of finally has a moment to sort of take a step back and think about, where does she want to go? And she's been really wanting to sort of pivot into working in a kind of consumer tech type role, either as a PM or a PMM. And she loves this sort of tangible product-facing type work. So she talked about, it'd be really cool to be head of like marketing or partnerships at Fitbit or something like that. So in any event, still needs to take the test, wants to target a 700, and just kind of asking us like whether or not her school list is right. And I'll tell you the schools they are: Carnegie Mellon, Michigan, NYU, UCLA, and USC. So let's stop there because, Alex, I know you went back and forth with her and she asked some very specific questions too.
Yeah, another really interesting candidate, 356 GPA, like you say, 8 years of work experience. And I'm thinking this is a sort of candidate who, when they graduated undergraduate, had no aspiration to do an MBA, and, that was never on their radar. And they've gone through, have several years of work experience now. And after 8 years, I think there's been a recent epiphany, as it were, that maybe an MBA would really help her solidify her skill set and then make a little bit of a change in terms of going into product management or product marketing management or whatever it is, and looking at brands like Fitbit, which is obviously a highbrow brand. Lots of folks want to target that. I think, operations experience overall can be super interesting, supply chain experience, and especially, during COVID, and well, if she was in the UK, we'd throw in Brexit there, and obviously now the shocking war with Ukraine. Work in supply chain has got to have sort of really ratcheted it up in terms of some of the difficulties and the nuances they've had to deal with, that perhaps the same sort of experience 3 or 4 years ago wouldn't have been quite as interesting, because quite frankly, the global supply chains were pretty harmonious and calm and so forth, right? So maybe there's some interesting additional stuff that she can bring to the conversations and navigating supply chain and stuff. Other things that I really like, she's first generation female. So again, she's going to be underrepresented in the pool. We like that, not just because they're checking boxes, but, they have different life experiences, and perhaps overcome some additional hurdles to get where they've gotten today. So that's fantastic. I say, Graham, if she aces the GMAT, she's well within scope of the programs that she's targeting, and maybe could look a little bit higher. She's a little bit worried about the GMAT, Graham, and sort of targeting that 700. And if she hits the 700, I do certainly think with good app execution, these programs are within range. But she did ask a curious question that I want to bounce back to you.
Okay.
If she doesn't do as well as she needs to do in the GMAT, so she's targeting that 700, should she request a test waiver?
Yeah, this is a good one, right? Because let's imagine that she takes the test and she gets a 680 and is, disappointed. What would CERN or any of these schools on her list think of the 680, given, she has a solid GPA, really excellent work experience, and is first gen, female, and has been working for 8 years, right? So she has not been in the classroom for a while. I personally would rather see the 680 than no score at all. Because if I see no score at all, my first concern with an older candidate is, like, do they have the chops to kind of survive and thrive in the academic program at the school? Because they've been out for a long time. But if I see, hey, look, this person, they've been out for a long time. They just took the test. They got a 680. It's in the ballpark. We do accept people who have a 680 from time to time. Like, it's really not that much of an outlier. I would rather that. So my view is that, you gave her great advice, which is, well, why don't you take the test first and let's see how that goes. And actually, why don't you take the test first and plan to take it a second time? And if neither of those times work out, then we can have this conversation. Because I feel like she's got to take the test. But I personally think that the beauty of having a standardized test score when you're an older candidate is that you're providing the admissions team a recent data point on your academic aptitude and trying to ease some of those fears they might have that you've literally forgotten what 2 + 2 is, since you've been out of the classroom for a really long time. So I think it'd behoove her to study hard, take the test, and she doesn't have to hit it out of the ballpark because she has so many other positive attributes. But I think that, getting in range, would be terrific for her.
Yeah. And you make an extra additional point to that argument, is she's got longer distance from that undergrad, that 356. So having a test score is going to be more helpful in that case. Yeah.
What do you think of the schools? She's got Carnegie Mellon, Michigan, NYU, UCLA, and USC, and she wants to land in New York or LA. So I get USC, UCLA, NYU. I'm just wondering, I guess Michigan has that campus in LA as well. So that could be kind of an interesting option for her too. Anything, given she wants to work for maybe CPG or tech type companies, she's got Apple and Google and Sony. Is there anything she's missing, or do you think this is a pretty good list?
Well, I think she could shoot a little higher for some reach schools. Mm-hmm. And again, if that test score comes in within range, why not, right? 1 or 2 M7s wouldn't go amiss. So
yeah, okay.
I think there's a lot to like because of the profile. And first gen female supply chain management. There's probably some interesting anecdotes again more recently from that type of experience.
Yeah,
if she does happen to perform well in the GMAT and so forth, she should The ideal, the ideal app strategy is she gets denied at a couple of programs, gets submitted at a couple of programs, right? That way she knows she's reached high enough and she still has a choice of schools to go to.
Yeah.
She might actually go across the board with these schools if she does deliver on the GMAT.
Yeah, I think the two schools that come to my mind that I would add to the list at least to consider is maybe an early decision application to Columbia if she's interested in that program. And that's a top school. It's in New
Yeah.
York, which is one of her potential destinations. And then the other one is Wharton. They have the campus on the West Coast in San Fran. They obviously place a number of people in these tech companies too. So, but again, I think it'd be good for her to take the test, and I don't know what her timeline is, but get that done, see where the chips fall, and then begin strategizing around which schools to start with in round one and so on. But she's got a great potential candidacy here with the work experience she's had, and yeah, there's just a lot to like. I really enjoyed reading what she wrote. There was just something about the way she described her experience and stuff that made me think she's going to appeal to the committees too.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic.
All right. So, Alex, thanks for picking these out as always. And yeah, just really interesting candidacies, a couple of younger candidates and then one older candidate this week and from, different corners of the of the globe. So very good stuff. We will be back in 1 week's time to do it all over again. And I want to thank everyone for listening. And please just tell your friends, family, anyone who will listen about the Clear Admit podcast and have them tune in. We always appreciate more listeners, and we'll see you in 1 week's time.
Very good. Best of luck, everyone. Stay safe.